Norr with the Palestine Solidarity Movement is with us live from Berkeley. Now, Mr. Norr, would you describe these settlement constructions and new plans for these constructions as Israel's way of using this new window of opportunity for talks with the Palestinians as to its own advantage, using this time now to build its settlements?
Well, that's certainly true. They've been expanding the settlements all along. Peace process or no peace process, actually even more so while there are negotiations going on. I think the specific timing of this announcement may have to do more with, the diplomatic dance between Netanyahu and Kerry about the negotiations with your country, Iran, about the so-called nuclear issue. Basically, this is, if you look at Netanyahu's speeches and his YouTube videos over the last week, he's really out of control. He's really, I think he's losing his, whatever bit of sanity he may have had. And I think he's basically saying to the world and to the Americans and to the Palestinians that, look, we're not going to do any two-state solution. And of course, the Americans and so far the Palestinian Authority just seem to keep nodding and say, okay, well, we'll just continue the peace process. I think this is just a statement of open defiance. If you look at the map of where these new settlements are planned, they're just continuing to tighten the noose around Jerusalem. They're surrounding Jerusalem with these Jewish-only settlements. And I just hope the Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority in particular draw the conclusion from this and stop playing along with this charade.
And that is the major question here. Should the Palestinians continue to negotiate with Israel under these circumstances? Those who are promoting these talks and encouraging these talks say, well, Israel has been releasing Palestinian prisoners. That's the concession it's being given. So why shouldn't we trust Israel to enter into negotiations? At the same time, we're seeing these settlement activities. So what do you think the PA should do at this stage for any kind of peace to happen?
Well, I hesitate to speak for the Palestinians, but if I were the PA, I would never have gone into these negotiations, and if I were in them now, I would break them off. But I think the most important thing is for them to move to a new strategy, a new way of looking at their situation, and stop depending on the Americans in the peace process, the so-called peace process, as their strategy for the future. They need to go to the International Criminal Court. They need to mobilize grassroots popular resistance, nonviolent demonstrations, mass marches, strikes, a whole new way of trying to confront the situation, because it's clear that this approach they've been pursuing for 25 years now of dabbling with the Americans and trying to negotiate something and so on, it's just led nowhere. It's just dead end, and it's designed to be a dead end. A lot of critics have seen that from the beginning, that this was leading nowhere, and that how many decades do we have to keep reproving the same point? It seems obvious, and I hope I hope the Palestinian people will draw that conclusion and force the PA to draw that conclusion itself and come up with some new approach.
Well, you say here that if there isn't a will from the Israeli side to conduct meaningful negotiations with the Palestinians, this is something that, for instance, the United States, the main mediator here, or the one who's been portrayed as the mediator trying to bring peace to the region, should understand by now, or should realize by now, and should take some action against. But we're not seeing that. Why is Israel being allowed to do this, despite the fact that we've got the United Nations, we've got the United States as mediator?
Well, I think the Americans understand pretty well what the game is. I don't think they're surprised or that they had any illusions about where this was going. I think there's probably some tactical difference between the American government and John Kerry and compared to Netanyahu. Kerry wants to preserve more of a veneer of serious negotiations. Netanyahu, partly because of his political pressures within his own coalition, needs to be more defiant and keep expanding these settlements publicly. Americans would probably prefer that he do it more quietly, but I don't think. Basically, the problem is that the American government is Israel's agent. They've acted that way all along and through this so-called peace process, and the power of the pro-Israel forces in this country, the so-called Israel lobby, the power of the pro-Israel within the American media and in the U.S. Congress. All the centers of power in the United States are lined up behind Israel, no matter what it does. And so the illusion that the idea that the American government is somehow a disinterested broker, a neutral party that can bring the other two sides together is an illusion. It's the American government and the Israeli government lined up together against the poor, powerless Palestinians, and that's the way it's been since before the Oslo Agreement, and all the more so today.
Well, as long as you say that countries like the U.S. Is wielding this much pressure, we know, of course, of the influence the United States has in the United Nations. This means that the Palestinians would be on their own. How can they, do you think, on their own, under this situation, achieve anything in terms of their own causes? What must be done, would you say, by the Palestinians?
Well, I'm not optimistic that they can achieve any real victory, but at least they can struggle more effectively. I think they do have, because of their member observer status at the UN, they now do have access to the International Criminal Court, and I don't understand why they haven't taken advantage of that. I mean, I guess I understand it in the sense that the Americans probably threatened to take them off the payroll if they did. But at this point, I think that that's a very important direction they should take. And the other thing, as I mentioned before, is that they really need to mobilize the Palestinian people in a new kind of intifada, whether they call it an intifada or not, a mass movement to say to the world that, you know, this current situation, the situation that's dragged on for all these decades, is just not acceptable. We're not going to sit back and keep taking it. And I don't know where that will lead. The array of forces is such that I don't see how they can, you know, they don't have the power to stand up to match the Americans and the Israelis together, but at least they could put up a fight instead of just continuing to grovel and accept these humiliations. I mean, it's almost as if Netanyahu just keeps throwing sand in the face of the Palestinian people. Every week there's some new announcement like this, and it's time to stand up and say no more.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry Norr, with the Palestine Solidarity Movement, with us there live from Berkeley with his comments.